Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Midwest Rehabilitation Institute's Clinical Leadership Podcast. We're here today with Brett Bartholomew. And before we get started, I wanted to read something that Brett posted on Instagram not that long ago. And here it is. Leadership is not about one person. It is about how context, the environment, the history of a team or organization, and stakeholders all interact to form what eventually becomes labeled as leadership. And I can't tell you how much that resonated with me as a clinic owner and as an education entity owner. It's just bigger than me. It's bigger than any one person. So Brett, first of all, thank you for taking time out of your busy day, busy work schedule, life schedule this time of year, and taking time out to sit down with me and chatting for a few minutes. So thank you and welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. Appreciate you having me, Alex.
So let's dive right in. Let's get right into a little bit of your background real quick, like where you studied, where you learned, and what kind of got you in this mindset of coaching and leadership kind of together. So I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, I'll try to pare it down simply. I mean, it's part of a 300-page book and then a ton of courses. So I'm going to try to do this in 5 minutes or less, probably 3 minutes or less. So did my undergrad at Kansas State University in kinesiology, master's degree at Southern Illinois University, Carbondale, with an emphasis in motor learning, specifically attentional focus and cueing. So looking at how communication impacts motor skill acquisition and also the enhancement of gross and fine motor skills and tasks. That manifested itself into just a continual interest into different aspects of social dynamics, social physics, the coaching process. When you're able to see KPIs of performance increase simply based on the way you communicate, it's really hard not to get more and more interested in that. As I dove deeper down the communication and behavioral science rabbit hole, it always irked me of two things. One, that there were no formal education really outputs or clinics or workshops for people in the performance community that also expanded pan-domain outward. Of course, I think we all are familiar with these kind of leadership, rah-rah, trust fall-based workshops that exist. I don't think that those are the reality that most people live in. I think that those are things that people typically go to and they network and they have coffee breaks and they check a box. So that led me to create what we call the Art of Coaching Apprenticeship, which again is a pan-domain 2-day experience where people can come learn more about the latest in effective leadership science behind it, and just the true Machiavellian issues that we all have to deal with in day-to-day society, and working with pro sports, working with professional athletes, injured athletes, high school athletes, a need for this really became evident when I realized that no matter how detailed my programming was, or no matter how much I focused on technical aspects of my teaching or training, usually those things were diverted by external agendas, power dynamics, egos, whether that was on, the side of a sport coach, or maybe it was a parent, or maybe it was another superior, right? Where the perception wasn't there, right? Any kind of intervention. Many of us are familiar with these things. So I learned for any of us to do our jobs more effectively, whether you're in medicine, physiotherapy, strength and conditioning, life, you need to understand how to solve people problems. So that's been my focus since then. I experienced the dark parts of those things early on in life, as I detail in my book, Conscious Coaching. I was hospitalized for a year of my life at the age of 15. Around a lot of subject matter experts, nurses, doctors, dietitians, who are really tasked to get a lot of us in the hospital. And we can dive into this later if you want, but again, I promise to be brief, back to good health or optimal health, because we were all in pretty depleted health states when we were in there. Myself, especially, I was down to 98 pounds, risk of cardiac arrest, really, really deteriorated health status. But really, this hospital, what we saw is a lot of infighting even within the staff, people wanting certain recognition, doctors wanting to prescribe drugs because they were getting kickbacks. Nobody really interested in getting to know the deeper nuances of what drives individuals and their behavior, as opposed to people just looking at us all like a symptom. So that's in a core what I'm trying to change throughout the performance industry and throughout leadership in general, if that consolidates it.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And that's a very good snapshot into, what's ultimately led you here to this moment today. And so you mentioned your book. So let's talk briefly about your book, Conscious Coaching, the Art and Science of Building Buy-In. So that's an interesting title. Can you tell me a little bit more about where you came up with that?
Yeah, I mean, straightforward. Conscious coaching. The word conscious because I get really tired of this dichotomy that people create, where it's like, in strength and conditioning, it's are you a weight room guy or a speed and agility guy, or do you use barbells and dumbbells, or are you a kettlebell guy? Like people create these divides. That's always really bugged me. I've never gone to a dentist personally and heard them say I'm just an incisor guy or I'm a molar guy. So I think it's a really weird thing in our field. And so for me, a conscious coach is somebody that takes a holistic 360-degree view, right? You look at the definition of conscious, that's a totality of awareness, right? Of all the contextual elements of what it takes to lead. And buy-in is simple. Buy-in is trust. If you had to have an equation for buy-in, it is trust plus commitment. Commitment's very different than compliance. There were a lot of people that got really upset. Not a lot of people. There were a small amount of people that got really upset at the term buy-in because they thought that it connotated that we were selling. The reality is buy-in is a term that almost everybody around the world recognizes and uses. So sure, we could sit here and debate about nomenclature and get really into the weeds with that. But for me, why not meet people where they're at and use terms they understand instead of alienating them or trying to be ridiculous and come up with a Franken term,
Yeah. Good point. So why did you, I know you kind of mentioned in your background a little bit, but what made, I kind of like the reference of like a switch. So like what shift or switch took place for you to sit down and go, okay, there's a void or maybe like a gray area right now in our industry. I'm going to write about this topic. So can you tell me a little bit more about the mental process that you went through to actually sit down? Because it's a daunting task and it's a good book. But to sit down and write, all that you've written, what shift took place in your mind?
So to make sure I understand you correctly, you're asking me what shift took place in terms of me deciding to write the book, or are you asking what was the mental process like of actually writing?
Oh, good point. Let's go with the first part, and then we'll follow up with the second part.
So why I felt like I needed to write the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes hand in hand with why I felt like I needed to really create the workshops that I had mentioned to you. It was really annoying seeing every coaching and leadership book be things like, let me try to, I want to be respectful here. A lot of them are kind of self-helpy.
No need to be respectful. We got 6 listeners. You're good.
No, but people get, I think, a lot of people look at, if you go and look at most coaching or leadership books, a lot of it, if it's not like some kind of biography or autobiography, it's like 10 steps to be more empathetic, or it's like, just be loving, be trustworthy, be this. It's so generic, so fortune cookie. And again, my goal is to expose the world to, the deeper realities, the problematic nature of leadership, the fact that you can have all the desirable leadership traits that you want, and that doesn't mean that people are going to follow you. So, I embrace the darkness of the ambiguity of the coaching process. I mean, it's just something I've lived, Alex. For 14 years of my life, I've worked with kids, Navy SEALs, pro athletes, and these guys don't all line up and just like, yeah, tell me the way, like you got to get a guy from East St. Louis who watched his mother get stabbed or shot, who is now playing football simply because he needs to feed his family and maybe he loves it, to listen to a 5'8" white dude from Omaha, Nebraska that never stepped in the National Football League. So whether people want to admit it or not, like that takes a certain degree of influence. That takes a certain element of understanding of game theory. That takes a certain element of persuasion and even manipulation. And people look at those terms like they're bad, like Game of Thrones. You manipulate the dial on your volume knob, you manipulate your thermostat. Manipulate just means to wield something skillfully. So I think that whether you're looking at clinicians, coaches, anybody in the world, they have to quit getting emotional about these terms that they perceive to be negative, and they need to understand their actual empirical definitions, because they're no more harmful than fire or physics. It's dependent on how you use them.
Awesome, man.
You got me fired up, man.
Yeah,
I just get tired of bullshit. I'll be frank, all right? You said I can say what I want. I'm so tired of leadership bullshit, coaching bullshit. I'm so tired of just like this world where everybody is supposed to be, something they're not, because that gets in the way of a real leadership. And that's why most people don't listen to us. because everybody is faking and being superficial and not just embracing the messiness.
Yeah, I think even if I want to pause real quickly and like inwardly reflect on what you're saying, it's so easy for me to look at the traits of my own leadership and be like, yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing that. I'm doing that. Ooh,
Right.
maybe I'm not doing this, but maybe
Yeah.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's why I originally read the quote that you put on Instagram, is because that resonated with me, because I am 100% guilty of that, where I think leadership is me walking into the door and influencing the people in the room. And it's like, no. The leadership influences even when you're not there, and even before you, and will be long after you. So that is something that I've had to have a mindset shift of my own. And I'm sure I'm not the only clinic owner that is experiencing that, where
No, I mean, we have a lot of them that come to these clinics and they say the same thing. I think in our last apprenticeship, excuse me, our 2-day event, we had, 4 or 5 physios. We only allowed 10 to 15 people in it because we wanted to be very
yeah,
tight knit. And in the one we're doing in Atlanta, excuse me, again, January 25th and 26th, I think we already have 4 clinicians signed up for that as well. So that's what I mean by pan domain, is everybody deals with these things. Because right now, Alex, let me ask you this. What development programs currently exist for the social side of what we do, or true leadership development? Like, have you been around a lot of outputs that have really gotten into the nuts and bolts of social science and communication?
I would say bits and pieces of it, but not something that that could basically take, in my world, either a patient or a client, from the day they come into our doors until the day they leave. There's not something that can and I know there's no cookie cutter recipe for it.
Right.
But to give you a direct answer, no, there's not something that covers all the domains. There's only little slices or snapshots. And so that's frustrating, because now here I am taking this person's ideas on leading people or leading employees. I'm taking this person's advice on leading patients. So and then I've quickly had to take a step back and realize, well, their principles, they're actually overlapping a little bit. But, I do get your point that the answer in short is no.
Yeah, I mean, there might be things, right? I can go to a national conference and there'll be a 60-minute talk on it in the morning, right, in the exhibition hall. But what I'm talking about is a like fully immersive event where you're evaluated on your social prowess within the moment. You watch film reviews of yourself interacting under adaptive constraints over those 2 days. And then you break up and do case studies. The entirety of the event and the outputs that you get are about those things, right? Like, I hadn't seen that. And if I had, again, it was very surface level. It's like, how did you make Brenda feel? How did Brenda feel there? And I'm like, oh God, what is this? Like an 80s HR commercial with a VHS tape, So yeah.
Well, along the same lines there, I was looking at your, I don't know if you call it a field manual or your field.
Yeah, the field guide. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was looking through it, reading through it, and something I read about one of the projects. I don't want to give away anything of it, but one of the skill, application lab, whatever you want to call it. One of the group projects you guys are working on was like just getting people to sign off on letting you film yourself and watching the video and basically reviewing yourself and looking at body posture, eye contact, looking at all of the little intricacies that go into an encounter. And I haven't done that yet, but me just thinking about the idea of a camera next to me while I'm working with a patient has already changed my behavior. So I'm, not looking at my phone, not looking at next patient's. I'm
right.
Like 100% locked in just at the idea of possibly recording myself down the road. So I've had a couple people sign off on recording their 45-minute appointment so that I can see and learn from myself. And
yeah, you need to.
That's something I never would have considered. And actually, when I read that, I thought, oh man, like there's actually no way I want to do that, which probably
you should.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do it all the time. And that was, that field guide was free for everybody because we have a lot of people that read the book, but we live in a society now where people want to read books and just go on to the next thing. Kind of like probably 90% of your listeners will listen to this and go on to the next thing. They won't necessarily apply it. And so, we that's not an option at the apprenticeship. They don't get to do that, and so they come for 2 days and they got to put their stuff down and they all sign an agreement that says, hey, I'm coming in open-minded and I'm okay being filmed and I'm going to deal with these issues and I'm going to work on myself as a skilled communicator, because communication is a very unique process. I mean, it's caused miscommunication has caused empires to crumble, businesses to fall, relationships to end, people to get injured. I mean, it fascinates me that we live in a culture that thinks it's something that's so easy, or that there's something they're already so skilled at. I think it's far harder to teach somebody how to be a great interpersonal communicator than it is to teach somebody a 3-position hang clean, or to teach somebody how to do a hinge pattern. I can teach somebody programming. I'm not saying that those things, I'm not trying to say that those things are super easy and that you don't need to go into the weeds of those. But I think if people were honest, they'd realize there's far less out there that teaches people how to coach and how to interact, as opposed to what to coach. So.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good word. I appreciate the deeper dive into that topic, and that this is something I'm sure, this might be a little foreshadowing that we'll get you out to the Chicagoland area for one of those apprenticeships if you're not already having that in the.
We host them all over. Everybody can just go straight on to Art of Coaching, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, all hosts have to do is provide food and snacks. They don't even have to cover, travel or anything. And then you have to have audio, video, obviously, so people can see presentations and learn. So we've tried to do everything we can to appease the market, because we realize that most Con Ed opportunities out there are thousands upon thousands of dollars, and sometimes make people go for 4 to 5 days. So we think we offer pretty competitive thing here.
And purely selfish speaking here, that's something that I would enjoy. So having you come up here and I know there's a couple of people that have also reached out trying to see, hey, can you try to see if we can get them up to Chicago? So yeah, this is something that we would like to do. And it's good to see that there's other people, all over the US that are similar minded in this. So you said you have one in Atlanta coming up. Yep. And I saw also you have University of Texas coming up as well.
Yeah, and then going to Winnipeg, and then next year we're in final processes of going to Scotland, Ireland, a number of them. So we usually don't put them up on the site until every single dot and I is locked in. But yeah, it's pretty simple. Somebody wants to host, we just require that they get a minimum of 10 signups. That's just what we have to make to make it feasible. So we always encourage people to go out into their community, all that. It's funny. There's a lot of people that think, oh, I'll just put it on my Instagram. And then it's like, hey, nobody signed up. I'm like, dude, yeah, you're going to need to go talk to people, right? It's like, that's a big thing I learned owning my own business is people only hear about something for the first time after you've talked about it about 30 times. I see it every day, even with my own podcast. We have a whole episode on it, or, I get people and then people are like, where can I learn more? I'm like, have you even looked at the website? And I'll get 20 DMs a day that are like, where can I buy your book? I'm like, dude, where are most books sold? Really? Go to Amazon, just Google it. And that's an issue in and of itself, right, Alex, is we have a little bit of learned helplessness in the community. And when I say community, I mean in totality of not only the health and performance domains, but in general, right? Everybody now feels like because we're all so accessible that they're entitled to something. And, when you're working with a client, a patient, when you're leading a group of athletes, when you're running a business, when you're doing anything, you are not entitled to anything. You're not entitled to their trust. You're not entitled to their respect. Now, you can think that you're owed those things, but really it's the individual's option as to whether they even view you as a respectable leader. And so, critical thought and strategic approaches and being mindful of all these things you need to do to mitigate and manage these situations is hard. And that's not taught either. So everybody's just like, hey man, can I get your book for free? I'm like, dude, who are you? It gets crazy. It's been a different world since I've gone out on my own in 3 years. You just see a lot of the things that I used to hear guys like Mike Boyle get on and just go off. Mike Boyle's a strength and conditioning coach in the Boston area. Folks don't know. And he's been doing it for a long time. And Mike's renowned for kind of being a curmudgeon. He's a very intelligent curmudgeon. But finally I told Mike, I go, I get it, man. I get it. When you get the 15th email in a day of somebody basically, asking for something. And then the minute you say, well, I can't explain this in one email. They get mad and then they leave a 1-star review and you're like, oh, you see a lot of different sides of people, man. I'll say that.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up you said 3 years ago you went out on your own and did, so Art of Coaching is your website and your business. How many people, let's kind of break down your business structure here. How many people work for you currently?
I mean, I have a very big problem and weakness in asking for help.
Mm.
I had no previous, like, I didn't have a business mentor, like I didn't know where this stuff was all going to go. The book's only 2.5 years old, and it became an international bestseller. It's now, I think, just over 100,000 copies worldwide and in 5 languages. And so I had to shift business gears. When I first came to Atlanta, I was still just training athletes all the time and doing this. And then it became, okay, now the book's taken off and I'm speaking. So now half of the year I train a bunch of athletes. The other half of the year I do a ton of workshops, clinics, speaking, and what have you. So I just now started asking for help this year because, early on you have that scarcity mindset of like, I don't know, like, is this money stable? Like, is the book going to sell really hot for a while and stop? And you only make like $2, if that, a book, right? Like it cost me most of my savings at the time, $25,000 to produce the book, in terms of editors and graphic design. And I had no clue what I was doing. I had no mailing list. Because I worked in a field where you're not supposed to have websites and social media. Like if you do those things, you're looked at as a sellout. You're looked at as somebody that's not in it for the team and you're in it for yourself, which is, looking back on that, is a really silly way to think. But that's just how strength and conditioning is. It's still very much in the Stone Ages in that regard. So to answer your question succinctly, now given that context, I have 4 people that I manage, 1 full-time, 2 part-time, and then I guess you could say a couple other contractors, but it's very sporadic. One of the full-time individual helps with my emails because I hate email, and that's the number one productivity killer. I'm not somebody that likes to sit down and be static. I'm usually coaching or traveling, so she helps manage my emails. She helps manage kind of contracts for speaking and things like that, all stuff that I had done the first 2 years on my own and nearly had a heart attack. I just got a virtual assistant because there are so many things we needed to add to the website so quickly that I really needed help there. That was terrifying. I mean, dude, I had one part-time assistant early on that stole from me, lied on their timesheet. I had another one that like almost deleted my entire Google Drive. Yeah, it just scares the hell out of me. And that's why I don't ask for help, because like, I just care more than most people. And I'd find that even when I delegated something, it would come back and it was like, you didn't even try. You know what I mean? I just paid you $500 for this and you didn't even try. And that's $500 that like, I don't have, you know what I mean? And so, yeah, I needed a lot of help. I think the biggest pain point now is not the help, though. It's changing the mindset of a community that is so used to getting everything for free. Coaching is a community where people expect you to give everything away for free. It's not very friendly to like entrepreneurs. It doesn't support its own in that way, I think, because they're so skeptical and jaded from being burned by, like the bullshit manuals that would come out. That'd be like 5 ways to increase your deadlift or 30 ways to run a faster 40. So like when you create something that, or anything, they just inherently think it's fraudulent. And, if you run a course that's $80, it's got to be 20. And then if it's $20, it better come with free lunch. And it's like, so it's just a field that I think is behind most other in our profession because so few strength coaches are entrepreneurs. Whereas like, it's nothing for somebody to run their own PT clinic or cash-based clinic. Now, that's more common. It's nothing for chiros to go do their own thing. You have surgeons that are writing books now and doing TED Talks, but strength coaches have just kind of like wanted to engage in the suffering Olympics, where like, it's like, no, like apparently we're supposed to just live and die on the floor, drive 1974 Honda Accord, breathe in carbon monoxide and be miserable our whole lives, or you're not legit.
Oh man. Well,
you don't even know where to go with that. I told you I was going to black out.
That was awesome. Because I think you're painting the picture that we can choose to either stay how things have always been, or we can choose to, I don't know, kind of see where trends are going and see how our influence, the different avenues of our influence come in. And so like, I know I'm not very influential on social media, partly because I don't really care for social media. I kind of dip my foot in the water on social media. I don't care. Like, I don't care if I have
Sure. Yeah.
14
Well, I mean,
or not.
and to be fair, like you shouldn't that much. Like, so I didn't want to do social media for a long time either. I do it now because like I know that there's certain people that just they've really appreciated it and you're able to connect with them and all that. But here's the truth. I know that I probably have, I don't know what my quote unquote followers are. Okay, so right now as we talk, I have quote unquote 85,000 followers. I can tell you probably less than 5% of those people are actually people that are coming to courses, fully engaging, listening to the podcast, on the newsletter. Less than 5% are probably real discerners, right? And I go to great lengths to like not put out the stuff that annoyed me. Like I used to never sign up for newsletters because every day I'd get peppered. And I'm like, bro, I don't need something every day.
Right.
So I put out a 2-time monthly newsletter. The first one is just raw thoughts. Here's some resources that might be helpful. Some from me, some from other people. That's it. The second one is a roundup saying, yo, I know you're all busy. Here are the last 3 podcast episodes I put out, the last few YouTube episodes I put out. Have a great day. The only time people will get multiple emails from me is if we're releasing a new course or what have you, and we want to give them, more details without giving them super long, right? But like, so you're right. Like social media to me, and I tell people all the time, Alex, it's crazy. If you follow me on Instagram, you see this. I tell people all the time, hey, if you want discounts and updates and where I'm going to be, then get on the newsletter. But to no avail, people will then be like, hey man, can I have a discount or can you do, and I'm like, no, like, cause the newsletter people are the people that give a shit at highest level. They actually want to hear from me. And that was a hard thing. Like I used to not have a newsletter. I don't think I had one until like 2 years ago. And then somebody literally called me out and they said, why don't you have one? And I go, nobody wants to hear from me, dude. And he goes, I think you're being really selfish. There are a lot of people that would actually love to hear from you. And I think that just never, I still don't know how to make sense of that. I don't know how to make sense of the fact that like, there's people in the world that like actually give a shit about what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like, I look at my work and like, don't get twisted. Like I like myself as a human being, but I don't think like, you know what I mean? You just have a different view of yourself. I'm not impressed with myself. Right. I like myself. I'd like to think that I put stuff out that's helpful, but I'm not impressed with myself. So if somebody like wants to hear from me, that's really touching and hard for me to believe. But then I realize like, all right, I have a responsibility to those people. If they're going to take the time to support me at that level, I need to do something. But you're right not to do, I wouldn't say that people have to do social media because most of those people don't care. It's just a quick dopamine hit and a double tap and a micro interaction.
Yeah. And along the same lines, I think that, our education company might have 1,200, 1,300 followers. But I would say if you look back in the last 12 to 18 months, we've had probably 50% of our Instagram followers attend an actual class with us.
That's good. That's good.
I don't care if we have 50,000.
Yeah.
So I like our percentages there, but I know I don't put nearly enough out there. And frankly, it's because I got other things to do. And I think your virtual assistant is a good idea for something like that, where I can just say, hey, your job, just take care of social media.
Yeah, I'd say that's tricky though. I'd warn you of that. So that's one thing I've never done yet, just because, again, I think people can tell, and so I really do handle all my social media. If people hear, they're hearing from me, and all those things. So it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that you have to make sure that that person really knows you. And so it's authentic and all those things.
That's a good point. That's good.
Because I can tell, I'll interact with somebody and I'm like, oh, that's clearly that. And again, the point of social media is to be social. So I think you need to it's the same with people that post and then they never respond to anybody's comments. Like it takes time, but I try to respond to nearly everybody's comments. Now, can I get to everybody? No. And I'll see sometimes 3 days after a post, somebody's still commenting on an old post. I can't go back. You know what I mean? Like I have a job, I have a family, but
right.
if you're going to comment on my post, I'm going to do my best to get back to you.
Right.
DMs, another story. 2 years ago, I'd try to answer all my DMs, all the messages and tweets, all those. I tell people now, listen, don't be offended, but if you DM me or send me a Twitter message or a Facebook, I'm likely never going to see that.
Right.
I just can't, man. You know what I mean? It's too much. It's too much. And so we're even looking at creating a membership site on Art of Coaching to help siphon that. because otherwise I felt like I was helping people all over the world, when in reality I was getting the same questions 400 times.
Mhm.
So that's why I did the podcast and the newsletter. Is like, I can't I can't keep helping people like that. My own health was deteriorating because I'd spend hours trying to get back to everybody. And so now we're trying to create, like, hey, here's a forum. If you want to interact, and I want to interact with you, but you're going to have to come to artofcoaching.com to do it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that
Like,
get mad about that. And they're like, oh, you're just trying to make money. And I'm like, dude, I'm giving you my time. Like,
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with an exchange of resource. Like, what do you have to pay? $10.99 a month? Like, okay. Like, and I'm going to probably tell you something that is going to save you $500 in a mistake. So if you don't want to do it, so I've had to get more comfortable with just being like, okay, if people don't want to like do that, then fuck them. Like, they're not really interested anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I definitely, I appreciate that, because on our side, we also get a ton of students that are either in PT school or Chiro school. And they, I could tell you like an outline of what their email looks like. And so we screen for those, and we actually have now on Google, on our Gmail, you can actually auto-populate like a template of a response.
Like, you mean the canned responses?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like you can create, so like if someone is asking for a student discount on a course that it already says, there are no student discounts.
We've had to do it for that too. It's a huge time. I mean, like,
yeah, but it's a huge time saver. Like, we were spending so much time, like, thoughtfully crafting an email back to each individual person. Like, well, what are we doing here? This is so inefficient. We got to have just either a frequently asked questions section, or just something that automatically gets sent back to them respectfully, understanding the financial restraints of a student. But I totally get where you're coming from.
But here's the thing with that too, right? And this is coming from somebody who, my parents grew up poor. I came from a middle income family, but like, I worked 2 jobs through college. I did 2 unpaid internships. I did a graduate assistantship with a $10,000 stipend. Like, I didn't get my first full paycheck, which is probably $35,000, until I was 25 or 26. I had barely any really savings. I funded my own book. I funded my own everything. Like, I'm not made of money. I'm not a trust fund baby. And here's the thing, man, when people say they can't afford something, and we get this all the time. So I have digital courses. Each digital course cost me $25,000 to make. The courses sell for $497. These are they're 2 separate courses. One's on coaching dynamics, influence, building buy-in. One's on how to manage a career throughout your life cycle as a practitioner, whether the entry stages, middle stages, long-term. It covers like burnout, financial management, marketing, all that. Those are $497. We have no interest payment plans, which break them down to like $87 a month, which let's call that $3 a day. And even though that's the amount of a cup of coffee, people will reach out and say they can't afford it. Now, if you look at, because I've gotten hit with this before, people are like, oh, you're an asshole and whatever. And I say, no, man, just think. We live in a time where more education than ever before is free. More than ever before. You can do books and articles, and you can find free, podcasts and YouTube. 90% of what I give away is free. So if like 90 to 99% of the information out in the world that exists is for free, and you can't actually invest in paying for the 1% that isn't, say it's a $400 course or a $10 whatever, or a $200, then the real issue there is you're budgeting. Like, you're not budgeting. If majority of stuff in life is free, like in terms of this information that's out there in the world, and you can invest in those little things that aren't, then you need to look at your budget. You need to look at your budget, because you're probably buying Chipotle twice a month, or you're probably buying a Spotify premium account, or you're probably buying your 15th book on articular manipulations or plyometrics or weightlifting, or you're probably buying your 13th webinar on program design. Like, but nobody wants to admit that. Nobody wants to admit that, like, they're probably just lazy. And in the middle, like, of all this, somebody in a 3rd world country has found a way to escape that and become a world-renowned surgeon and figure it the hell out. You know what I mean? Like, you can't make money. Like, my wife knows this. I'm like, if we ever get short on cash, I will drive Uber on the weekends. I can give a shit. What, is somebody gonna laugh at me? Oh, Brett's driving Uber. Yeah, okay, yeah, provide it for my family. Like, later, you know what I mean? Like, I have no shame about, I will do whatever it takes to provide for me and my family and find ways for us to stay ahead. But we have people that are prideful, and then they want to say, well, I work 8 jobs. Dude, you can keep your excuses. You're probably working the wrong jobs. Like, why are you doing a graduate assistantship or going back to school when you have 3 kids and a wife that doesn't work? Like, maybe think about that and just put off school for a minute and get some money and like think laterally. I just, people, it's learned helplessness.
Yeah, along that same line, you recently posted, I don't know where this quote came from, but you posted a picture, a framed photo that said, "If you think it's expensive to hire a professional, wait until you hire an amateur." Where did you see that?
A guy that I interviewed on my podcast, his name's Noel Brand. He lives in, Noel's going to kill me, I think the Netherlands.
Okay.
Really, really nice guy. He'd sent it, he had put it on his account and he had saw it at a friend's house or something. So I don't know. I reached out to Noel. I was like, I'm reposting this. And Noel's an awesome guy. And yeah, so that was a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think we also, and my wife and I had this conversation all the time, is that like right now in the world, like there's like an enormous amount of money and cash. And so I think that most people, I don't necessarily, I'm speaking in generic terms here. Most people don't have money issues, but they have cash flow issues. And there's a difference. And I think that most people would look at the price of your course or the price of our courses and be like, oh no, like that's a lot of money. I can't pay for that. Well, maybe you can't pay for that right now, but let's break it up into smaller bites. Or
Yeah, you can pay.
where are you just bleeding money from? And
Yeah.
let close up those leaky buckets and move on from there. And most of the time it's what they're not doing that is actually affecting what they want to spend their money on, like a course with you. So awesome, man. This has been really good. I told you we'd wrap it up pretty quickly. About 35 minutes gone so far. We've got some info for you here. If our listeners want to follow you on social media, like we talked about a little bit, tell us where we can find you real quickly here.
Yeah, real simple. Go to artofcoaching.com. Couldn't be more easy. I paid good money for that domain for a reason. It's not the art of coaching. It's just artofcoaching.com. I'm all over Instagram, Twitter, all that, at coach_Brett B. I imagine you'll put those in the show notes.
Yep.
So artofcoaching.com, info@artofcoaching.com. One more time, artofcoaching.com. Or my book is available on Kindle, Audible, and hard copy on Amazon all across the world. That's Conscious Coaching. And then, a portion of the proceeds for that goes to the Alzheimer Association,
Awesome.
Leukemia Lymphoma Society, and then local Atlanta law enforcement. So
awesome, very cool. Yeah, we've got your book here. It's one of the books that we give our interns as they come in from either PT school or Chiro school.
Awesome.
It's on our like musts for clinicians to read, and so we highly recommend it for students and current clinicians. Brett, I can't thank you enough for coming on. We'll be in touch. We'll try to get you up here for an apprenticeship in the future. I know you got a busy schedule. Thank you for taking time out to meet with us and to go over some leadership principles in your book and social media and a couple of rants here and there between us. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for the content that you put out. It doesn't go unnoticed. Your hard work is paying off, and we really appreciate taking time out to speak with us today. So thank you.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate it, guys. Yeah, take care. Talk to you soon.
All right, thanks.
Bye.